Uh, Jeff is, as you probably guessed, is Paul's son, and he's joining us from San Diego. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, about 1,000 miles away. So nice that we can welcome experts such as him in from a distance. He didn't have to fly over here, so it wasn't as difficult to get his attention and a little bit of his time. He's budgeted about an hour to be with us this morning, and he's quite he has a similar background in mine in some ways. Has a lot of experience with hardware and software, electronics and computers and technology. Also has a lot of a strong business background, and I'm glad that he actually asked us. He asked us not to share his employment because he's not speaking for his employer. He's speaking for himself, and also another thing I like about that is that we really like people that aren't selling something. Basically, he's just here to share his knowledge, and that's a wonderful thing. So we appreciate your generous offer of your time and your expertise. If I missed anything, feel free to add that. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Jeff, and he can make his presentation for us. I'm also going to give participants the ability to share screen in case Jeff has a screen he wants to share with us.
Yeah, I did have a couple of slides I was going to pull up just to keep me on track.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hopefully I can provide you some useful info. Quick background. Yeah, I don't hide who my employer is. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I just don't want to be here representing them. I currently work for one of the major national banks in their cyber threat management group. We collect cyber intel and data, and I'm kind of responsible for some of the computing platforms for ingesting data that analysts use for identifying threats and just kind of making business decisions. I've been there for about 2 years, and before that, I used to work for Georgia Tech Research Institute in their cybersecurity lab, working with the Navy. They have a small group in San Diego. So I've been in IT for 20 years now. A lot of it's enterprise, but I'm hoping some of my knowledge can kind of transfer to just day-to-day making smart decisions. And in fact, maybe showing mistakes I've made so you don't have to make them as well. Let me pull up my screen and share. And let me know if you can see it. All right. So I'm just going to be jumping through a couple. Let me see. I got to move this. I want to be able to see you, but I also want you guys to be able to see what I'm sharing. I'm just going to go through 3 or 4 basic categories of things you can do to be safe online. I'm okay if you have questions and want to interrupt me. If not, that's okay too. I'll probably take about 10 minutes here, and then we can spend the next 45 minutes just answering questions. So first thing, the way computers are these days, we do almost everything through our internet browser. Just a couple of very basic steps you can take to really improve your security. That's to always use an updated, up-to-date browser. If you want to ask me for a recommendation for a browser, I would probably tell you Google Chrome. However, I have a love-hate relationship with Google, and you may see, I'll show you some reasons why as I go through some of this. I'm gonna have a couple of actual demos to show you why I'm recommending some of these things. The second thing I would highly recommend is using an ad blocker in your browser. There's some aspect of that is keeping revenue from websites that rely on ads to stay online. However, there's a big security reason why to use them, and I feel like that outweighs some of those concerns. So, and then the third recommendation I was going to give you is to always verify the URL, the very beginning part of it, when you're doing anything sensitive, banking, government forms, that sort of thing. So I'm going to demo why. I've got a couple of pages already loaded up, and just a couple of comparisons here. So on the left, I have the same web page without an ad blocker turned on, and on the right, I have a web page with the ad blocker turned on. And just by looking, you can see I would much prefer to be able to read the news article from the right than the left. First off, they're prompting me for notifications. You got advertisements on the top, advertisements on the side. And honestly, you don't know which of these advertisements are going to take you to trustworthy sites and which are going to take you to not so trustworthy sites. And these are, and I've seen much worse examples of this. Sometimes if you're downloading software, I've seen some sites where you can't even tell the actual link for the software you're wanting to download because of all the ads that are around it. So I'm just pull up a second example, just a CNN article I was reading yesterday.
Yeah,
yes.
Looks like we're not seeing your example.
Uh-oh, okay. Then let's take a look at what I'm doing with my share here. Maybe I wasn't sharing the entire screen. So let me share the desktop. Okay, can you see my example now?
Yep.
All right, I apologize for that. So here's a news article on CNN. On the left is the page without an ad blocker, and on the right is a page with the ad blocker. As you can see, not only is it just nicer to read, there are links here that you probably don't want to follow. So, and then here's the big one. This is going to be a personal example. About 2 months ago, I was helping my father-in-law renew his Sentry Pass, which is basically the, it's tied to the global entry, trusted traveler program, such as TSA PreCheck. Sentry's for being able to do crossings at land borders, so between Mexico and California. And first off, yes, we misspelled it when we searched. It actually ends in an I, but Sentry, I wouldn't have thought about it. It didn't seem inappropriate. In my defense, I actually joined him after he had already done the search and ended up on a page. But what I wanted to point out is at the very top, the very first link is for a site that isn't what you want. And if you click in on it, it might take a second to load. They managed to make it look pretty official. So you start filling out the application information, and this site has changed a couple times. I've watched it, and there's plenty of these. I've got a link in my slides which I can share about a Better Business Bureau article saying that these scams for related to global entry and TSA PreCheck are growing and growing. And what the problem is it's collecting a lot of sensitive information. Not only is it your standard social security number, birth date, but there's other information that you provide when you do these applications. So unfortunately, I actually helped him fill out one of these applications, paid them money, and we didn't actually think twice about it until later that night, and realizing that the fee we paid was about 2.5 times what it actually should have been when we went and looked it up. Thankfully, we were actually able to do a chargeback with a credit card, and we were even able to contact this company and cancel it. They're basically saying, we're here to help you submit the application. I don't know that I believe them. I think a lot of these ads are coming up to collect information, and then to be able to charge more along the way is just bonus. But we made this mistake. They have his information. We're running credit. We locked down his credit, and then he is now paying for credit monitoring related to this incident. But I wanted to show, and I'll go back to the original. If you're running without an ad blocker, the very first link is the .gov site where you would actually apply for this pass. So just in day-to-day browsing, there's going to be a lot of situations where this comes up. And this is where I say I have a love-hate relationship with Google. This is Google Ads. They're making money off of selling this ad that shows up at the top that's sending you to a site that you really shouldn't be going to. And that's how they're making their money. So they do security. Go for it.
Question. Okay, you're talking about ad blockers, and I got my computer very legitimately through ABC. I'm sure you've heard of ABC, and the guy knew what he was talking about because, well, I got a Dell, whatever. I think it's good. It's an i5, but he loaded on my computer Malabal, something Malbytes or something. It's
Malware bytes, yeah.
yeah, and every once in a while, or I do, you got to scan for ad stuff, and I do scan it. Is that legitimate Malwarebytes or something? Is that a good thing to have on my computer and scan?
It's decent. Malwarebytes is going to be protecting you after you've already installed something. An ad blocker in the browser is going to prevent showing you links at real time while you're browsing the web. So they kind of are two separate different tools. A lot of the antivirus software platforms do similar things to Malwarebytes, but it's not a bad program. And I've got in a slide later here, I've got a little information about antivirus, which is sort of where that falls in. So yeah, basically just wanted to give an example of where an ad blocker really could save you. And the other thing that we should have been doing when we visited this site is noting what was the URL. And if I had looked, I would have seen that it wasn't a .gov site, it was a commercial site, and that should have set up a red flag. But I think I was tired that day, we just didn't catch it, and that's how things happen. Okay, so I'm gonna jump to the next category, which is passwords. Just some very basic things you can do with passwords. First thing is encouraged to definitely use different passwords for websites. I think I've got 300 or 400 different logins now, so trying to remember passwords for all these different sites is near impossible. And I think we all maybe sometimes try to use the same password to save our memory, but at a bare minimum, use different passwords for important sites like banking, email, your cell phone service. Maybe something that people don't think about, but often you think your banking credentials are the most important that you have. Really protect your email and cell phone account credentials. If you think about it, if you go to reset one of your online accounts, what are they going to do? They're going to send you a password link to your email address. What if somebody gains control of your email account? They can send out password resets for various accounts and then change them without you knowing. You wouldn't be getting email notifications because they've now gained control with your email. Same thing with cell phones. Text messages are often a way to verify logins or password changes. It's not that hard for somebody, if they get your login for AT&T Wireless, to order a new SIM card, put it in a phone, and start receiving those text messages. And it might take you a couple hours to realize you're not receiving phone calls and text messages anymore. This isn't something that is going to hit, it takes effort to do these sorts of hacks. So, the average person, maybe the odds of this happening isn't too high, but it's some very basic protection you can take. And if you were to lose your email or cell phone, it can be very painful to try and regain access to those. So just a reminder to treat those as extremely sensitive.
I had a question.
Yes.
What about Facebook and all these hacking that, someone will go, oh, I've been hacked on Facebook. Are you going to deal with that later? This Facebook hacking,
A little bit. Eric, you're like right ahead of me. I'll show that here in just a second. In fact, I can do that right now. So I was going to show for my own email address. There's this, have you been pawned? They save a database of various password and login dumps from different sites that have been hacked. So I gave one of my email addresses in this search, and there are 17 sites, at least that they know of, and there's probably far more that you don't, that have been hacked, and that my password from that account is available now to hackers on the dark web or just general download. And what happens is once they have that, email address and password link, what they do when they just try and hit other sites with that same email and password, and they can automate this and do it very quickly. So if you're using the same password amongst sites and one site gets hacked, well, then all of a sudden they're going to have access to other sites that you use the same password for. So that's the real reason why you want to use different passwords per site. Some of these over the last 10 years, there's been Adobe. I'll pull up my phone number. This shows in one data breach. Guess what? Look, Facebook in this month, 500 million users' information was lost. Now, I don't believe passwords were lost as part of this one, but it was names, phone numbers, addresses. So it's just part of that information that bad people can collect to slowly, if they want to take over your identity, they can. And the thing is there's so much of this information is available now that just assuming that your social security number is secret, it isn't. There's so many places that have lost it in the last 10 years that, you got to take other precautions. So that was sort of Eric, what you were asking about. There was Facebook data that's been lost. I don't think it's anything critical, but it's just another of those linkage of being able to link an email address to a person, to a phone number, to an address that builds up that information that hackers can use.
Okay, I like Facebook. I started a job and I'm like, man, I better not be a Facebooker on this job. But so Facebook asks certain questions like, what's your phone number? And should you give that to Facebook or not? What should you give Facebook if you have fun with it or whatever, you connect with people? Should you what type of information should you not give Facebook? What I'm saying.
So that is your own personal decision, because not only are you giving Facebook that information, but if you decide, you have to decide what of that information you're going to share. I didn't actually put slides together, but this is a really good point. On Facebook, you can pick what information you're going to share at what level, with friends, with nobody, with friends of friends, or to public. And often I think the default for Facebook is to share some of this information to public, like where you live. So if your full Facebook profile is public, somebody, this is a really quick intelligence gathering exercise somebody can do. They know where you live. They know where you have lived. They know where you went to school. They know where you went to high school. Like, any of your security questions, like who is your high school mascot? They can find that out with public information from Facebook. So it's something to keep in mind as you're making decisions. Facebook is great. I would not, there's a lot of people I would not be in touch with if I wasn't on Facebook, but I'll be honest, I don't share very much on it. Related to passwords, I have two recommendations, but I want to caveat it with that I want you to be comfortable using the technology, because if you try to implement it and you're just not comfortable using it, it can be worse than not having it at all. But there are password managers. I have links to some of the top two where you create one secure master password that you use to log into your database, and then it will log into different sites for you and generate random passwords for every single different site. And often that's then linked to what's called two-factor authentication, where a password is something you know, and then two-factor authentication then ties that with something you have, your cell phone, something like that, that provides a second code that you enter when you log into sensitive sites, that really narrows down to not only does somebody have to know your password, they have to physically have your security token generated on your cell phone. So you can look into Authy or Google Authenticator for some more information on those if you're interested in taking kind of the next step in security. I do highly recommend password managers. It's just that you've got to be somewhat comfortable using them. So, maybe something to experiment with a couple of accounts, and as you get familiar with it, you can expand it to more of your logins. Third category I was going to talk about is it's called social engineering. That's honestly what the majority of
Excuse me
hacking
for a
is.
moment. I think
Yes.
Bill Bean had a question, if that's okay. Oh, and one more thing, by the way, Jeff, if we get to where you want to finish your presentation, if we have too many questions, let us know that. But Bill does have a question. I'd like to give him a chance to ask.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not paying attention to the chat, so interrupt me. That's fine.
That's fine. Go ahead, Bill.
On that previous slide, is that two separate authenticators, or is that all one site to use?
Okay, so the password managers, these are two different options, two different companies. So yeah, you can choose either one. There are others as well, but these are the two biggest out there right now.
Okay.
Now, if you want a recommendation, I would point you towards 1Password, but LastPass is very good as well. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm looking at the next line, the two-factor authentication, Authy.google.
Oh no, they're two separate links, and I'll share these. Authy is an app, and Google Authenticator is another app. They both provide the sort of the same purpose for generating two-factor authentication codes. And I would recommend Authy, but both work quite well, and they're both free.
Jeff, quick question.
Yes.
I think I'm assuming that you're going to share this document with us so that the links will work with people.
Absolutely. When I finish, I'll dump a share link into the chat here, and then you'll have it.
Great, and I'll just kind of share that with people on our email list as well.
That'd be fine.
All right.
All right. Jumping into social engineering, as I was saying, this is kind of 90% of what hacking is. It's tricking people into giving you the information that you need to maybe steal their credentials. So some of the basics, I think we kind of all know these, but it's just a reminder. Don't answer callers you don't know. If you do, know that they called you. That's red flag number one. Like, if they call you and say they're a bank, honestly, just be like, hey, can I call you back on the phone number on the back of my credit card? Because with caller ID spoofing, that sort of thing, you don't know that person really is from the bank. So it's just better if you can then be like, oh, okay, thank you, I'm going to call back. And then that way you're talking to your bank. Same thing with caller ID. You may get a phone number it may say Wells Fargo is calling you. Odds are that's not actually Wells Fargo calling you. Again, I think these are basics, just a reminder. Another basic, but I think we forget it, don't give your passwords to anyone. Within family, we know that, but never anybody who calls you or contacts you or any IT support, they're never going to ask for your password. And then another one, which I'm going to give you an example of, is these text verification codes. Don't give them to anyone who contacts you. I would have said don't give them to anybody, but I do know some organizations that if you call in for support, they then text you a code to verify that you are who you are. But in general, you don't give those out. Here's the reason why. I have an article on this Reddit link if you want to read more. It was basically just somebody posting something they fell for. But they got a call. They were out having drinks with a friend, didn't think much of it. Somebody called saying they were Wells Fargo. Hey, we're seeing activity on your account. Hey, first, can you verify who you are? We're going to send you a text message with a verification code. He gets a text message, reads the code off to the caller. They go, okay, good, you verified. I see that you've had these 4 charges, and then one of the 4 was not legit. It was a $1,000 charge that he hadn't approved. Guess what happened? That caller was hacking into his account. When he read the verification code off, that was the code to get into his account and reset his password. So they were then able to log into Wells Fargo as him and then read off his transactions, pretend like they were from the from the fraud department from the bank. And then in the meantime, they transferred money out of his account to somewhere else. So that's why I say those verification codes, don't ever give them to anyone who calls you, because since they're used for password resets and activities such as that.
I just had a quick question. Amazon always sends you something. Amazon's all right, right? Because, I'm sure everyone uses Amazon. They go, hey, verify this text, call, put this number in. Amazon's all right if you call them, and do you know what I'm saying?
If you call them, I think it's different. But if somebody calls you, never give them those verification codes. And I think we can kind of forget, we often can forget that a minute or two into the call, like that somebody called you rather than you calling in. Again, if somebody calls you, you have no idea who they are. Same thing if they're asking for information for validation. If somebody calls me and they get to the point where they're asking for my address, social security number, big red flag. Like, nope, I'll call you back on a phone number I know is trusted. And then another just basic thing, be wary of any email or any URL links in emails or text messages. I think we're all pretty good at this, but some scammers are really good at creating an email that looks exactly like it came from Chase Bank. But then when you hover over a link in the email, you realize it's not taking you to chase.com. It's taking you to some other site that's going to look exactly like chase.com, but is there to gather your credentials so that then somebody can try and use those to log into your Chase account. So, and I'm saying Wells Fargo, Chase, just as an example, it's for any of these accounts. So, once again, just really watch any URL links you get in emails or text messages. And then just jumping into some of the general other basics, keep your computers up to date, patch the operating system and the applications monthly. I set a calendar reminder for myself. The applications is very important. Microsoft and Apple are going to do a really good job of reminding you that there's an update available for your computer that needs to be installed. But Adobe Acrobat Reader, Microsoft Office, some of these various other applications that are honestly where some of the biggest vectors for malware come, aren't as obvious to keep up to date, and you just want to make sure you update those as well. I was going to say backups are very important. At this point, it's pretty inexpensive, if not free, to back up your important information. I like to keep my phone in a state that if I were to lose it at any given time, I'm not worried about the photos or data I lost. I'm just worried that, oh, I lost a device. I need to tell Apple to disable it. And then, I'm out the money to buy a new phone, but otherwise, I'm not missing 4 months of pictures of my kids that I'm really sad that I lost. Some of those examples of things that will sync for free to, I feel like, pretty inexpensive. Google Photos will sync photos straight off of your phone and up to the cloud. There's Google Drive, there's iCloud if you're on iOS, there's Microsoft OneDrive. There's plenty of opportunities, and there's other full computer backup software you can use as well. It's just, in my mind, it's worth the $2 to $5 a month to just not have to worry about it. And then antivirus, I would say it's not as critical as it used to be. 6-7 years ago, I would have told you absolutely have to be running an antivirus. Microsoft and Apple have gotten, I think, better at baking security into the operating system. The Windows Defender built into Microsoft, I think, is adequate for most people. It's important that you maintain security when you're on the browsers. Just don't go downloading any software from anywhere. You really need to think about, am I downloading something from a legitimate site? But it doesn't hurt to run an antivirus. And then I was going to say, there's no need to be spending money on antivirus. All of the internet providers I'm aware of will provide a free copy of antivirus to you if you log into your account and go to internet. And there's I don't have the site up, but I can pull up even mine. I think I have McAfee antivirus available to me for free through Spectrum, my internet provider. So I feel like I was pretty quick through all that, but that kind of was what I had notes on. So anybody have any questions you want to throw at me?